The theme of this month is expectation, and it's almost as if that theme was written specifically for us. As a congregation with a new minister, and as a minister with a new congregation. I'm sure you're wondering what to expect from me as your minister, and I'm wondering what to expect from you as a congregation. It's as if we're dating, although we've already taken the big step in our relationship. So I think you can make some judgments on what to expect from me, that my second sermon with you all is about race. I am passionate about social justice and particularly about race issues. You'll hear about it from me in different ways. I love to preach about it, but it can be hard to preach about it without being too, preachy. And there is a unique challenge of me preaching on race as a white person. So, a fun story, my wife Karen got one of those DNA kits. Have any of you done that? She got it for Christmas last year. When she got it back, it confirmed what she pretty much knew, that she is white, white, white. She's coming mostly from Germany, which does explain a certain level of stubbornness, I might say. It is said very lovingly. You all don't even know how much I love my stubborn wife. So I haven't taken a DNA test, but it doesn't matter. I know that I am white, white. My parents were white, my neighborhood was white, my schools were almost completely white, and most of my social group as I've grown up has been white. Honestly, it would be better if this sermon were coming from a person of color, and Benji and I have chosen words and music from people of color, but here we are. And I do want to say to all of our people of color here today that I hope that you get something from this as well. But I also want to acknowledge that you are watching a white woman talk to a majority white congregation about our challenges with race. Peggy McIntosh, the writer who first coined the term white privilege, tells a story about fish to get us how we consider our whiteness. There was a wise old fish that was swimming through the water. As he swam along, he encountered two young fish swimming by. He turned to them and said, "How's the water?" And the young fish replied, "What water?" Whiteness is often like that. I don't see my white privilege because I have only ever swum in the water of whiteness. I don't see how it is built into our systems of conversation, systems of government and decision-making, of who gets access to, to anything, from benefits to education opportunities, and don't even get me started about Felicity Huffman's college entrance trial and sentence, and how that is an example of white, rich privilege. To healthcare and to support from police authorities and the justice system. I hope that you all know by now that privilege does not mean that your life has been easy or that you haven't had struggles. Let me be very clear on this. It means that your exact life would have been harder if you weren't white. I don't want to discount anyone's trials or tribulations or my own, but the color of my skin is not one of them. And I also want to talk about the term white supremacy culture. These are still loaded words for many of people in our culture and our civilization. And yes, white supremacy includes the extreme fringe of fascists and people who believe that white people are supreme and all other people are less than. And this is hateful rhetoric that we have seen over and over, and it kills people. It should be condemned by all leaders of all countries in every way and in the strongest language possible. It goes against everything we believe and our principles of worth and dignity of all people. But let me just be clear. White supremacy is not just a term for the fringes. It is the thinking that has embedded into our culture, and that thinking that white is the norm. That white history is the basis of our history, and that white ways of doing things are considered foundational. If you will, it's the naming of the water that we swim in. There are so many ways that we need to dismantle white supremacy. We need to change hearts and minds outside of ourselves. We need to disrupt, change, and absolutely reorganize our systems of structure that still support white supremacy culture that exists around us everywhere. And we need to vote into power people who understand those structures and are committed to changing them. As Unitarian Universalists and as people who are striving to make a difference in the world, we are programmed to want to do something. We want to march, to show up, write letters, fight oppression, do something to make a change. And all of those things are important. And usually there's an and to that work. My message today is that I think any work worth doing always begins and ends with ourselves. Anti-racism and combating white supremacy culture is my spiritual practice. I have many other ones too, and hopefully you'll get a chance to hear those as well. But I encourage you to think about it as such for yourself as well. I will always be peeling away the layers, noting where whiteness has influenced my thoughts or actions. I am looking for it in our current events and in the discussions that I see all around me. I'm looking for mindsets where a viewpoint reinforces a white, and may I add, usually a white upper class mindset. The key here is that as a spiritual practice, those of us who are white are not doing this for people of color. We're doing this for ourselves. And all of us, no matter what our skin color, have to wrestle with the layers of white dominant culture that shapes all of what we see and experience. But those of us who are white need to work harder, because seeing outside of the white culture is not our lived experience. We need to work harder to see the water we are swimming in. Let me be clear that this is sometimes hard work. And it's hard work because no one wants to be seen as bad people. We've bought into this mythology that racism is bad and we don't want to be bad. So we want to show all the ways that we're the good people. We're the ones that are helpful. We're the ones that are doing the right things. But by having that binary of saying there's good or bad has us not look at what we need to look at. There can be shame in acknowledging all of the pain that racism has created in American history. But if we get caught up in that, then we're missing the point, and we're missing the opportunity. We are doing this because, as Lila Watson says, that my liberation is bound up with those of anyone who is oppressed. That is the big challenge, to not see others as other, to see them as ourselves, and that I am not free until everyone is free. We have to set all of us free from the systems that are all around us. Times like what we're living in now can be so frustrating. I want to change the heart of those who are marching in the white parade marches. I want to change the heart of the man who killed our siblings of color at the Walmart in El Paso. I want to change the hearts of those who influenced his thinking or that have such a big pulpit and microphone right now. I want to change the heart of our leaders who have let all of this thinking go without condemning it. I want to change all of that. But I, standing here, don't have that big of a sphere of influence. Oh, heck, I can't even change most of my own family. But I can change myself. I can, every single day, look at what is happening around me and change my own heart. Let me give you a couple of examples of things where this has been a spiritual practice. Last spring, I was giving a sermon on the history of Unitarian Universalism. In it, I was talking about our Puritan forebears and what they taught us about being in covenant. At the end of the service, a young woman who was a woman of color, she said, "You look like a person who's open to feedback." I knew immediately what was coming next. And she said, "They weren't our forebears." Of course they weren't. I'm so used to talking about our history. You know, the history that we were taught in school. And seriously, I hadn't even thought of it when I was writing it. 3 little letters, our, O-U-R, presuming shared experience of where we came from. But of course, that's not where we all came from. It was the perfect example of white thinking invading my thoughts. So this is where spiritual practice comes in. I work to not go to a place of shame. I went to a place of, wow, I didn't even notice that, Christine. Look at that. She's absolutely right, and I didn't even think about it. There's me noticing the water that I'm swimming in again. I thanked her. I apologized to her. I promised to make that change. And now I've been telling absolutely everyone I possibly can about that little comment because I think it's such a great example. Let me give you another example. In my internship congregation, we had a protester, somebody who was just looking to get mad at those liberals, and found our congregation. He handed out flyers to our neighbors that were supposedly from us, saying that we were going to do terrible things. He set up at the entrance of the church, not on the property, but on the curb, which was common property, so the police couldn't remove him, and yelled at our members as they came and they went. And then a chilling, but clever, but chilling act. He had a meat lover's pizza sent from Pizza Hut to our vegan potluck. You laugh, but it was icky. Like it was wrong. Like there was just, it felt so violated. After enough members became concerned, the board decided to hire an off-duty police officer for the next event. In committee meetings the following week, many people said that they felt so much safer after having the officer here. And they noted that most of the Jewish temples in the area were hiring police officers at $150 a week, especially after the killings in Pittsburgh at the synagogue. There was talk at how we might do the same. This was an opportunity to engage my spiritual practice. I asked a very simple question. Would I feel this way if I weren't white? And immediately the answer came to me, no, I wouldn't. In fact, it's possible that it would make me feel less safe. Now, I'm not debating whether it was appropriate to involve the the police in this case, we actually had some officers go to the gentleman's home and the harassment stopped. That was appropriate use. What I was noting, however, was that not everyone may feel safer by taking these actions. And that's just acknowledging my perspective as a white person. I'm sure we can think of so many more examples when we hear terms like slave driver or nitpicking, and we don't realize the awful racist history behind them because they've been used so often in our vernacular. When we see someone who doesn't fit in because of their, well, anything, their clothes, their smell, their size, their skin color, their health, their accent, anything, and we realize that fitting in is really meaning belonging to a majority culture. So why do we think of this as a spiritual practice? Why do we do it as individuals, and how does it benefit our larger congregation? I do want to make clear that me talking about this and us doing it is not for the goal to make our congregation more diverse. We are doing it because this is how we become better people. It is a side benefit that if we have visitors of any type who come in and see us as more grounded and authentically welcoming, that we can be a welcoming community for all. But that's not the why. Having a spiritual practice of acknowledging our own water and thinking in the perspective of others applies to anyone who is othered in our world. Anyone who is Black, Latinx, Asian, Indigenous folks, our trans siblings, people with mental illnesses or different mental abilities or disabilities. Basically, anyone who is outside of the dominant culture. And what can we do? We still are people who like to do things, right? What can we do to make it a spiritual practice? Well, educate ourselves. It is really wonderful that Audrey came up and told us her experience, but I'm so sad she had to do that. We should be doing that work ourselves so that we don't have to be told how to do it by a 15-year-old member of this congregation. Read what you can. We've got books back there. I put a sheet out there of the top 10 books you should read if you're interested in exploring this. Support media that promotes Black voices. Make them a part of your daily media intake. There's podcasts, musicians, authors, so many ways. And I've got some great podcasts if anyone wants. Pod Save the People. Anyone know Pod Save the People? Listen to it. It's the news through the lens of people of color. Same news, different way of looking at it. It's fabulous. Open your lens to the world. Think about what might an experience be if you were a person of color. And nurture your diverse friendships, not to make yourself look more open or liberal or a good person, but because it helps make you truly a better person, to expand your own thinking. Be aware of the news, stories, Black-centered news sources. Be humble. Be open to learning. And constantly, with grace and humility, acknowledge and remind yourself of the culture, this white supremacist culture that we live in. But here's the biggest thing that I recommend. And remember, it was my service last week, and I promise I won't rehash this every week, but maybe for a month or so. Screw up. Talk about race. Take the risk to talk about it, knowing that you're probably saying the absolute wrong thing. Apologize if needed, and learn from it, and keep on trying. And I want to lift up our Racial Equality Collaborative, who are doing this work with each other. It's so impressive. Make it a practice to look at the world outside of your normal lens and then notice just how much bigger and inclusive and better the world looks because of it, and how much we'd rather live in that world. This is not to make us feel like we are better people. It is critical that we do it for our community. And as we've seen it over and over in our world, seriously, honestly, and realistically, it is what we need to do to save the world right now. May it be so in our congregation and in our world. Amen.